Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to talk about A. Lange Söhne. And to start, there's so much to this company, I didn't quite know where to start. So I'm going to start with the Battle of Leipzig in 1813. Now the reason I'm starting here is that Napoleon had conquered most of Germany, and in Saxony, where Graf is located, is in Saxony. As Dresden is a major city there, and Glashütte is where Lange Söhne. Now, what happened at the Battle of Leipzig will give you a sense of the Saxons. The Saxons were on Napoleon's side, and the Prussians, the Poles, the Russians were on the other side. This is also called the Battle of Nations. And after the battle got started, after a couple of days, the Saxons, along with those from Württemberg, decided to change sides. And so they did. The Saxony has always been an interesting place in the history of Germany. The area around Glashütte, where the Lange and Söhne is located, I think it was around, and sometime in the 12th century, they discovered silver mines there, and there was a lot of mining and iron ore. They discovered there was this whole group of mountains I think it was to the south and east of Glashütte, called the Ore Mountains. Part of it's in the Czech Republic and parts in Germany. Anyway, what happened, these areas developed a good deal of wealth because of this, and along with wealth came arts and crafts, which was sort of interesting. Later came science along with it. But the Battle of Leipzig sort of once and for all put the Saxons back into Germany. And when Germany finally became Germany, after all of these different duchies and different little groups, the Saxony was part of Germany. Okay, we're going back to about 1830, when the first Frederick A. Lange was an apprentice. And he was an apprentice to Christian Friedrich Gutkes, and he was a famous clockmaker at the time and watchmaker. And he was hired to make this famous clock for this opera house. And it was called the 5-minute clock because every 5 minutes the numbers would change. And it still exists today and still works at the opera house. It has been through a lot. The opera house was destroyed several times. Okay, so when Frederick A. Lange, the founder of Lange and Söhne, was an apprentice, he helped make this clock, with this famous clock. And moving on, in 1845, now it was on December 7th, 1845, that Frederick Lange got a loan from the Saxony government for, it was like 80 thalers, which was a hunk of silver, and I'm not quite sure what it would be, the equivalent today, but probably a lot more. But anyway, he did it because what had happened was that a lot of the miners were out of work. And he had been an apprentice, and he wanted to start his own watch business. And so what he did was that when he went to the government, he had a perfect business plan. But one of the things, and I think one of the attractions, was that here he was, he's going to train miners to be watchmakers. Now, the thing about it is that watchmaking is pretty fine kind of work, whereas picking an axe in a mine isn't. A very different kind of thing. But he was successful. And so this was the beginning of it. Now, another thing that he did, once he got he trained different people and had these apprentices. His really good apprentices, he would say, look, why don't you go out and start your own company? And what he wanted, and this is all in Glashütte. By the way, Glashütte is for Glas is glass, and Hütte was smelter. And so it was like a glass smelter. They made windows. They made glass windows there back forever. And so anyway, that's where it got its name. So anyway, so he started it with a loan from the government and paid it back, and this was sort of the beginning of it. So it wasn't just for him, but it was for sort of his area. Okay, one of the early inventions of his, and it doesn't sound significant, but it really is, because it has to do with production, and this is the 3/4 plate. Now, the one pictured here is a modern one. They're still used today, a lot of companies. And the thing about a 3/4 plate was that you could have all of the gears within this 3/4 area. Then you'd have this part that was cut out where you could have the regulator and the balance wheel and the escapement. All together there where you could get to it. Before, they had to work between these two plates, but with the 3/4 plate, they could put all the gears under the cover, and then they would have this other piece to work on it. Really, it really speeded up production, among other things. Okay, this is in 1846 after his death. To me, it was one of the most important inventions that he had. Moving along, now this is taking a jump up to 1902. He was contracted to make this very complicated watch. In it has a rattrapant. It has, let me see what else is in it. The alarm, the grand, petite and grand sonnerie, minute repeater, chronograph. Let me see. It's got all of these different parts to it, and it was done. They only made one, but it's more like an accomplishment for a talented watchmaker, and it was really amazing. Right at the same time, Leroy had made the most complicated one. It was actually in 1900, a little before this one. All right. Also, during this same time period, I have 1900. That sort of 1900 up into the first third of the 20th century. Ferdinand Graf von Zeppelin. There were some other people who were doing things with science and technology at the time, and they needed accurate watches. And there's a pocket watch, and there's old Ferdinand Graf von Zeppelin, and they had Lange Söhne made these highly accurate watches, including chronometers. I had one that was Fusée and chain, which is a type of watch, I guess you might call it a remontoir d'égalité, for having a constant force. All right. Now the next phase was rough. Okay. Now Walter Lange, who was the great grandson of, maybe he was the great-great-grandson of the founder, or the great-grandson, I think. He was born in 1924. Well, he wanted to be a watchmaker. Well, this was great news. Here was this family. They were making these great watches. And here comes this kid who says, I want to be a watchmaker. So he went to work on it. And one of the things that he patented was I think it was in the 1930s, was adding a certain type of metal to the hairspring to give it some kind of constancy. It would add to the the way in which it would work. Later on, those ideas were taken by Navaroks. Okay, so in 1933 to 1945, this was when Hitler was in charge, and things were not so good. World War II. Now, Saxony's right on the border with Poland, so it was right in the thick of things. And this period, Walter Lange was recruited into the Wehrmacht. There's no record that I could find of what he did. I would imagine someone who was a watchmaker would probably be put to work on guidance systems, but I really don't know. Okay, so the war ended, and so he goes back to Glashütte, right? He's there like a day or so, and his factory is bombed. The next day, the war ends, right? So his factory totally wiped out. Well, in 1948, the Soviets and sort of this new East German government that had become this sort of a similar type of totalitarian government, I said, okay, guys, we're going to collectivize the watchmaking here in Glashütte. So I took all of the watchmakers, including Lange, and put them together. And they said, okay, now everybody, we're going to have a union, and we want everybody to join up. Well, Walter Lange said, wait a minute, in my own company, I got to belong to a union. And so they said, yeah, that's the new way we're doing things now. So he read the contract and said, no, I'm not going to do it. They said, okay, we got a job for you in a uranium mine. Well, a uranium mine probably wasn't the best place for your health. So Walter Lange and a friend went to Berlin and got into what was called the Green Zone at the time, and then escaped over to West Germany. So he was gone from Glashütte from 1945 to 1990, or maybe it was 1948. But anyway, he was gone 40 years. And now, it wasn't until 1990 that he came back to Glashütte. He'd been away for a long time. Now, in the meantime, the Soviets and the East German government had put together all of these watch companies under this name of this thing that the initials were GUB. I cannot pronounce it, and I'm not going to try. So it was GUB. But after that, after the reunification, Lange was able to start his watch company again. So it was in 1990 that he cranked things up again. Now, in 1994, they actually came out with 4 watches. And from then, they've developed, from that point, they have 5 major models now, and each of the types has several different submodels to it. The Lange one, the 1815, the Zeitwerk, Saxonia, and the Richard Lange. Here, these watches represent just about every kind of watch that there is. There are all kinds of different complications. There's tourbillons, there's Hussein chains, there's, you name it, chronometers galore, and different kinds of models that they have. So but I mean, I don't think you're going to find, at least I didn't find any, and if there's one that escaped me, that's possible. But I didn't find any of these, sort of these really wild kind of experimental things that you find with Hublot and some of these other companies. I'm not criticizing it for not being that way, or criticizing the other companies for being that way. It's just sort of that these are relatively formal dress watches, as for the most part. Okay, they have 40 calibers. To me, this was the most impressive thing. In other words, they don't have like one caliber fits them all. And if they're this kind of watch, we're going to throw this caliber in. But they have quite a few. And also, some of these are rectangular or tonneau. And I haven't I'm not sure which watches they're for. They that I haven't run across that they still have. They used to have one when they first came out in 1994. They had this sort of a tonneau shape one, but I don't think it's still in production. But they have 40 calibers. Now that means they are a serious watchmaker. It's I don't know. To me, I can't emphasize that enough. Another thing that they do in their production is that they put the watch together, take the whole thing apart, and then put it back together again to see if it still works. I mean, they're really their production and their quality and is all very high. Also, too, one of the things that I'm not too sure about, all of the watch cases are precious metal. There may be something in titanium. I don't think so, though. They're gold and platinum, and that's pretty much it, I think. Anyhow, so lots of calibers. Now, one of the things that I wanted to sort of wrap this up with, I noticed this in the Zeitwerk. They had, and I said, look, this looks exactly has the kind of digital time telling, one in Roman numerals and one in Arabic. But here's a new Zeitwerk with this, and I wonder if history counts. So anyway, A. Lange Son is a remarkable a watch company. I could have gone on forever about the history of the thing because it's so interesting and so intricate, but it's mainly the watches. It does have a history, a very big one. It's not a Swiss history, but it's very much a German history and one of the beloved Saxonia. I mean, they're really big about being from Saxonia, not just any place. Okay, well, I'd very much like to hear what your opinions are, what you think of it, and if you have an A-long, I'd like to hear what you think of that too. And also, as always, this is an invitation to subscribe to Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch production. See you on Sunday.